399 BC, is one of the most influential philosophers in history, often regarded as the father of Western philosophy. Born in Athens, he revolutionized philosophical thought by proposing a method of investigation based on questioning and the pursuit of true knowledge. His life, work, and death influenced countless generations of thinkers. It is said that Socrates was not physically attractive. According to accounts, he had a flat nose and protruding eyes, even being compared to a Silenus, a mythological creature similar to a satyr. However, he was extremely charismatic and possessed impressive physical endurance, being able to withstand cold and hunger without complaint. His personality was marked by humor and irony. He enjoyed provoking people by questioning their beliefs, but always in an engaging manner. His simple and unpretentious lifestyle contrasted with the ostentation of other Athenians. His view on religion. Although Socrates was accused of disrespecting the gods of Athens, he was not an atheist. On the contrary, he believed in a higher form of divinity and often spoke about a daemon, an inner voice or spiritual guide that advised him on certain decisions. This concept was unusual for the Greeks of his time and may have contributed to his condemnation, as it seemed to challenge traditional religion. His participation in the Peloponnesian War. Before becoming a renowned philosopher, Socrates fought as a soldier in the Peloponnesian War, a conflict between Athens and Sparta. He demonstrated bravery in several battles and was praised for his courage and physical endurance. How did he earn a living? Unlike the sophists, who charged fees for teaching, Socrates did not accept payment for his philosophical discussions. This set him apart and reinforced his image as someone committed to truth rather than profit. He lived an extremely simple life, relying on the generosity of friends and admirers. Influence on politics. Despite criticizing Athenian democracy, Socrates was not a supporter of tyranny. He simply believed that political decisions should be made by wise and well-prepared individuals rather than by those who were merely popular. His political stance, however, made him a target of influential enemies, which may have contributed to his condemnation. Socrates lived during a time of great political and cultural upheaval in Athens. The city was the heart of Greek democracy and philosophical thought, but also faced crises such as the Peloponnesian War. The son of Sophroniscus, a sculptor, and Phaenarete, a midwife, Socrates received a traditional education before becoming a self-taught thinker. Unlike the sophists, who charged for their teachings, Socrates preferred to engage in dialogue with anyone interested in knowledge, regardless of their social status. He believed that wisdom was not about accumulating information, but about recognizing one's own ignorance. One of Socrates' main contributions was the so-called Socratic method, a system of critical questioning designed to dismantle superficial beliefs and stimulate critical thinking. This method consisted of irony. Socrates feigned ignorance to encourage his interlocutor to expose their knowledge. Meutics. Through a series of questions and answers, he led people to reflect on their own concepts, helping them give birth to new ideas. This method challenged established truths and disturbed many politicians and leaders in Athens who saw him as a threat. Socrates left no written works. Everything we know about him comes from his disciples, mainly Plato and Xenophon. Among his key ideas, the following stand out. Know thyself. For Socrates, self-knowledge was essential for wisdom and moral conduct. He believed that people should reflect on their own beliefs and attitudes to achieve virtuous behavior. The pursuit of truth. He believed that truth could be attained through constant questioning and reason. He rejected the idea of accepting ready-made knowledge without questioning it. Virtue as synonymous with knowledge. According to him, no one errs intentionally. Evil happens out of ignorance. If a person truly knows what is good, they will act accordingly. Criticism of Athenian democracy. Socrates saw flaws in the democratic system, believing that rulers should be chosen based on knowledge, not popularity. He argued that government should be administered by those with competence and wisdom rather than by those who merely have public support. Philosophy as a way of life. Socrates believed that philosophy should not be just an academic study, but a way of living based on the pursuit of wisdom, questioning one's own convictions, and improving one's character. Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods of Athens. His trial, recorded by Plato in the dialogue Apology of Socrates, revealed his defiant stance and unwavering commitment to his beliefs. Refusing to flee when given the opportunity, he accepted his condemnation and drank hemlock, a lethal poison. His martyrdom became a symbol of the fight for truth and freedom of thought. His death marked the beginning of a new era in philosophy, serving as a major catalyst for the development of Plato's and Aristotle's ideas. The impact of Socrates was immeasurable. His method influenced education, politics, and moral philosophy. He is remembered as an example of intellectual integrity and courage, whose life and death continue to inspire those who seek truth and knowledge. His legacy endured through the centuries and laid the foundation for great thinkers, such as his disciple Plato, who founded the Academy of Athens and developed fundamental philosophical concepts. Later, Aristotle, Plato's student, expanded upon these ideas, influencing fields such as ethics, logic, and metaphysics. Socratic thought influenced Enlightenment, existentialism, and other modern philosophical movements. His method of questioning is still used in contemporary education, encouraging students to think critically and explore fundamental questions about life, morality, and society. Socrates' stance toward knowledge and social conventions highlights the importance of independent thinking. His story remains a reminder of the necessity to seek truth and challenge dogmas, making him one of the greatest pillars of Western philosophy. Last moments and reflections. According to Plato, before drinking the hemlock, Socrates spent his final moments discussing the immortality of the soul. He believed that death was not an end, but merely a passage to another form of existence. When the dose of poison began to take effect, he remained calm and asked that a rooster be sacrificed to the god of healing, Asclepius symbolizing his liberation from the physical body. Socrates firmly believed in the soul's immortality, and his ideas on the subject appear primarily in the dialogue Phaedo, written by Plato. This dialogue narrates Socrates' final hours before his death and presents a profound discussion about the fate of the soul after death. Here are the main arguments he presented on the topic: the argument of opposites, cycles of life and death. Socrates believed that everything in nature occurs in cycles of opposites. For example, day turns into night, and night becomes day again. Similarly, life and death are opposing forces that alternate. If life comes from death, then death must also give rise to life. This suggests that the soul does not completely disappear after death, but returns in some form. This idea reinforced the belief that the soul existed before birth and would continue to exist after death. The argument of recollection, remembering previous knowledge. Socrates argued that learning is actually the process of remembering something the soul already knew before birth. He used as an example the fact that children without formal education can recognize abstract concepts such as equality or justice. This would indicate that the soul already possessed knowledge before being born and therefore existed before the physical body. If the soul existed before birth, it would make sense that it continues to exist after death. The argument of the simplicity of the soul. Socrates compared the soul to intellect and pure ideas, which are immaterial and eternal, whereas the body is physical and perishable. He argued that everything that can decompose is made up of parts, like the human body. The soul, being indivisible and immaterial, cannot decompose. Therefore, the soul cannot die with the body, as it is not made of the same substance. This idea became one of the foundations of Platonic thought on the soul and influenced various religions and philosophies in later times. The fate of the soul after death. According to Socrates, the fate of the soul depended on how a person lived their life. He believed that pure and philosophical souls would be freed from the cycle of reincarnations and dwell in a higher plane of wisdom and truth. Impure souls, or those attached to material pleasures, would reincarnate in new bodies until they reached a state of purification. This idea has similarities with Hinduism and Buddhism, which discuss reincarnation and spiritual liberation. The acceptance of death. Socrates did not see death as something bad, but as a liberation from the body and a return to true knowledge. He said that the true philosopher spends their life preparing for this moment, seeking to detach from the material world and get closer to the truth. For this reason, before drinking the hemlock, he remained calm and confident, certain that his soul would continue to exist in a higher realm. Socrates' view on body, soul, and spirit. Socrates made a distinction between body, soul, and spirit, but these concepts were not exactly as we understand them today. He spoke mostly about the body and the soul, and within the soul we can interpret something similar to what we now call spirit or mind. To understand this better, let's explore how he viewed each of these elements. The body, soma. For Socrates, the body was the physical part of the human being, responsible for desires, needs, and pleasures. He believed that the body was temporary and perishable, destined to decompose after death. Socrates saw the body as a necessary instrument, but one that often hindered the true development of the soul. According to him, the body feels hunger, thirst, pain, and pleasure, which can distract a person from the pursuit of knowledge and truth. The physical senses, sight, hearing, touch, are imperfect and can deceive us, preventing us from knowing reality as it truly is. This means that for him, the body was like a prison for the soul, limiting our true essence. This idea influenced Plato and later philosophical traditions, which were later absorbed by Christianity and other religions. The soul, psyche. For Socrates, the soul was the center of human identity. He believed that a person's true essence was in the soul, not in the body. The soul had three main functions: thinking and reasoning, the ability to reflect and seek truth, morality and ethics, what allows us to distinguish right from wrong, self-control over bodily desires. The stronger the soul, the less enslaved a person is to physical desires. He taught that the main mission in life was to take care of the soul, as it was the only immortal part of a human being. According to him, people who live only for pleasure and material possessions are enslaving the soul to the body. Those who practice philosophy and seek knowledge are strengthening the soul and freeing themselves from the body. When a person dies, if their soul is pure and wise, it is liberated and reaches a higher state of existence. In other words, Socrates saw the soul as something that needed to be refined and purified, freeing itself from the illusions of the material world. The spirit. Socrates did not use the word spirit in the modern sense, but he did speak of something that can be interpreted in a similar way: the daemon. The daemon was like an inner voice, a spiritual guide, or a conscience that advised him. He claimed that whenever he was about to do something wrong or not in accordance with the truth, this voice would warn him. Many later philosophers associated this concept with the human spirit, which seeks connection with something higher and transcendent. We can say that for Socrates, the soul was the center of thought and morality, while the daimon was a kind of spiritual guide, helping the soul follow the right path. General summary: the body is the physical and mortal part, which can distract us from the truth. The soul is our true essence, immortal and responsible for thought and ethics. The daemon can be seen as a spirit or inner conscience, guiding us toward truth. This way of thinking influenced Plato, Aristotle, and even later religious traditions, such as Christianity, which adopted the idea of the separation between body, soul, and spirit. Socrates' influence on later philosophy. The influence of Socrates on later philosophy, especially in Plato's works, was immense. Without Plato's dialogues, we would probably know very little about Socratic thought, since Socrates left no written records. Plato not only preserved his master's ideas, but also expanded them, turning them into a robust philosophical system that deeply shaped Western philosophy. One of Plato's greatest contributions, influenced by Socrates, was the theory of the tripartite soul, presented mainly in the dialogue The Republic. This theory divides the human soul into three parts, each with a specific function and desire. Rational part, logos, represents reason and wisdom. This part seeks knowledge and truth, being responsible for reflection and discernment. It must govern the soul, ensuring that decisions are made based on rationality and justice. Irascible part, thymos, related to noble emotions such as courage, honor, and ambition. It is the source of the combative spirit, determination, and willpower. For Plato, this part of the soul must be guided by reason so that it does not become impulsive or destructive. Concupiscent part, epithymia, represents the most basic desires and appetites such as hunger, thirst, and sexual desire. It is linked to pleasure and physical needs. If not controlled by reason, it can lead to excess and moral degradation. Plato used this division to explain both human psychology and the organization of society. He argued that just as the soul should be governed by reason, society should also be structured based on this hierarchy. Philosophers, representing reason, should govern. Warriors, related to the irascible part, should protect the city. And workers, driven by concupiscent desires, should produce the goods necessary for survival. The influence of Socrates on the theory of the soul. The tripartite soul theory has roots in Socratic ideas, especially Socrates' belief that knowledge is essential for a virtuous life. Socrates maintained that ignorance was the cause of evil and that true wisdom led to self-discipline and justice. Plato developed this idea by asserting that reason should govern the lower impulses of the soul, ensuring that a person lives in a just and balanced way. Moreover, Socrates influenced Plato's view that the soul is immortal and that the body is merely a temporary prison. In the Phaedo, Plato describes Socrates just before his death, discussing the immortality of the soul and the idea that, after death, the soul is freed to a world of pure and true ideas. This view would influence not only Platonic thought, but also the development of metaphysics and theology throughout history. Socrates also inspired Plato's idea that true knowledge cannot be obtained solely through the senses, but through reason. This led Plato to develop his theory of ideas, in which he claimed that the sensible world is merely an imperfect copy of the world of ideas where absolute truth resides. Conclusion. The influence of Socrates on Plato's philosophy was so profound that in many dialogues, it is difficult to separate where Socratic thought ends and Platonic thought begins. The tripartite soul. Theory is an example of how Plato took his master's teachings and expanded them, creating a philosophical system that would become fundamental to Western philosophy. This view of the soul would also influence thinkers such as Aristotle, medieval Christian philosophers, and even modern currents in psychology and ethics. Socrates and self-knowledge. The famous phrase, "know thyself," inscribed at the Oracle of Delphi, was one of the pillars of Socratic thought. He believed that by knowing oneself, a person could attain wisdom and live justly and virtuously. For him, true knowledge did not come from ready-made answers, but from constant questioning.